Seemed to handle herself quite well.
She seemed to be very intelligent and well-spoken. I think she will serve her minister, Fred Mitchell, quite well.
Do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
And as we said, Minister of State for Public Service there, and MP for Golden Gates.
Yes, she is indeed. And I was saying that she will be assisting the Honorable Fred Mitchell in his duties as Minister of the Public Service. And I think she is well able to do that.
I, Leon Edward Lundy, do swear that I have no knowledge of any cause or impediment why I am not capable of sitting and voting as a member of the House of Assembly of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for any constituency within the same, according to the tenure or true meaning of the Constitution and the Parliamentary Elections Act, or any enactment amending or replacing the same. So help me God.
Let me ask you this, and I guess this is only a very subjective question, but what drives someone to become a politician, to decide to represent the people? In your case, what was it that said, look, I've got to go and make my contribution?
I, Leon Edward Lundy, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
Well, I was driven by the desire to help people. You know, my mother is dead now, but she told me when I told her I was asked by Sir Lyndon to run in the Golden Gates constituency, she told me if I'm not going in Parliament to help people, don't bother. That was simply her message and advice to me.
And that sounds like the best advice one can give.
That was my mantra from the day I entered politics to the day I left. And so I did my best to help as many people as I could.
Adrian Paul Gibson, do swear that I have no knowledge of any cause or impediment why I am not capable of sitting and voting as a member of the House of Assembly of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for any constituency within the same, according to the tenor and true meaning of the Constitution.
Good morning, honorable members and those under the sound of my voice. I join in with the psalmist today in declaring, "Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable." In our Moments of Impact devotional segment, I want to exhort you today from the topic, Stay Prayed Up. Prayer is one of those spiritual disciplines that must never be underrated, overlooked, or abandoned. No matter who you are, you should make prayer a part of your daily routine. In Luke chapter 18, verse 1, Jesus spake a parable and said that men ought always to pray and not faint. Jesus was basically saying we must stay prayed up. God has given us prayer so that we can stay connected to him. It is through prayer we get to commune with God and share our innermost thoughts and desires. It is through prayer God communes with us and share his innermost thoughts and desires for us. It is through prayer that we are able to overcome whatever obstacles we are facing. No matter how great the obstacle is, prayer can overcome it. It is through prayer we find peace when we are experiencing difficult situations and storms in our lives. Life, if the truth be told, can sometimes place us in some difficult situations that can rattle our peace. From the death of a loved one, to the loss of a job, to dealing with a wayward child, to a painful divorce, life can sometimes put us in positions where we feel stressed, worried, and anxious. If you find yourself in this situation today, may I submit to you that prayer is an effective antidote. Prayer has the ability to counteract any level of stress, worry, or anxiety you may be facing. Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7 says, "Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done." Verse 7 says, "Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we understand. His peace will guard our hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus." In conclusion, I want to admonish each of you under the sound of my voice to never let the fire go out in your prayer life. Whatever you go through, whatever you do, stay prayed up. Selah. Act on these things. Before I pray, I would like to invite the nation and all of you honorable members under the sound of my voice to join me on a 30-30 prayer shift challenge, beginning tomorrow, June 1, and ending on Friday, June 30th. The 30-30-day prayer shift challenge is a challenge to pray for 30 minutes per day for the next 30 days. If you join this challenge with me, not only will your prayer life shift over the next 30 days, but there are some things you are praying for. The Lord says to tell you it will shift if you pray over the next 30 days. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for who you are. We declare that you are great and you are mighty. We praise and we exalt your name. Father, we ask that you shift our prayer lives. Give us a greater passion to connect with you through prayer. Help us to stay prayed up no matter what situation we find ourselves in. You said in your word that men ought always to pray and not faint. So, Father, may we as a nation continue to pray and seek your face. We thank you in advance for answering our prayers. We thank you in advance for shifting our prayer lives. Now, Father, today we seek your blessings in this house. As we make ready for the budget communication, we pray that you would lead and guide these honorable members and grant them your wisdom and knowledge as they seek to manage the fiscal affairs of our nation. May you prosper us, and may you raise the quality of our living and make the wealth common for every citizen of this country. We thank you, Lord, for not only hearing our prayers, but answering them. In Jesus' name we pray, and all of God's people say, amen. Let us repeat the Lord's Prayer. Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning, Bahamas, and good morning to all the wonderful people in the gallery here this morning. Honorable members, since we last met, the country has lost one of its most valuable sons. On Friday, 26th of May, 2023, we were greeted with the sad news of the passing of the Honorable George A. Smith. For our listening audience, who may not have an appreciation for his contribution, let me just say that he served as a member of this Parliament for 24 years, from 1968 to 1992. I am advised that the Parliament will make special arrangements for a more fitting tribute to our fallen hero. Now I'll ask all members to stand as we give him a moment of silence. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, let's get on with what we were hired to do, the people's business. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. Thank you, honorable member. Statement and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there will be some documents to be laid later on as we lay the money bills. So,
And before you begin, honorable member, may I remind all members that there will be no disruption during the communication, please. And we all know that. It's a rule.
Playing that game today.
Madam Speaker, Providence has determined that each of us has been blessed to represent our fellow Bahamians in this Parliament as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of independence of our Commonwealth. My government heeds well the rallying cry of this year's celebrations, that we should do all that we can to lift up our one nation, do all that we can to cherish and promote our legacy, and we work tirelessly to secure our future. As with all national budgets, this second budget of my administration is the best expression of the intentions of the government. Woven among the various facts and figures are the priorities and choices we are making in order to continue to make life better for Bahamians. But they also contain an expression of our values to move closer to fulfilling the ambition and promise of independence, to put people first by ensuring that economic activity is not just a series of metrics, but instead driven by the very human needs for dignity and justice. And to ensure that the state, the government, in its drive for efficiency and effectiveness, does not lose its ability also to act as a good Samaritan. Madam Speaker, as I've said before, that it remains my privilege and the privilege of my life to represent the people of Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, and to lead a government which continues to work hard to fulfill its promise to bring a new day to the people of the Bahamas. Last year, we presented a budget that charted the way forward for our country. That budget was a key stepping stone towards fulfilling the plan which we have to recover, to rebuild, and ultimately to revolutionize our country. As honorable members will soon hear, we have made strong progress, and the public finances are much, much healthier than they were. Madam Speaker, the success is not just ours. The success is not just ours, but that of the Bahamian people.
Yes, yes.
And to all of them, I say thank you. By working in partnership to revive our economy, together we are forging a new course for our beloved Bahamas, and all our futures will be brighter for it. And so this year, we are able to introduce a number of additional short-term goals that not only address the immediate needs and opportunities we face, but continue to build towards a better future for everyone. After the turbulence and chaos of the preceding years, the natural disasters, the constitutional aberrations, and gross mismanagement of the public finances, we think it critical to do what we can to ensure greater security and stability in our country. And so, Madam Speaker, today we present a budget that has at its heart the mission to strengthen national security, economic security, and the lives and livelihoods of the people of the Bahamas. This budget communication is set out in three parts. First, as is customary, it will report on the microeconomic conditions to provide some context for what we propose. Next, I will highlight some of the key measures in this year's budget. Finally, I will offer a summary of the projected outturn in the fiscal year 2023-2024. Before introducing key measures in this year's budget, I propose to offer a summary of the country's current economic performance and our view of the future outlook for the Bahamian economy. This will set the relevant backdrop for the subsequent discussion of the economic and fiscal challenges and opportunities covered in the development of this budget, as well as the policy strategies that have been developed to address them. However, given our country's very close interconnectedness with the wider global economy, it is essential to consider first the wider economic climate in this discussion, to which I now turn. According to the International Monetary Fund, as stated in their April 2023 World Economic Outlook, the world experienced growth in real GDP of 3.4% in 2022. That was down from the post-COVID recovery rate of 6.3% in 2021. However, global inflation reached 8.7% last year, well above the generally desired target rates of inflation. The world economy is slowly recovering from the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The resulting disruptions in supply chains are resolving, and energy and food markets are stabilizing after being severely impacted by the Russia-Ukraine war. Additionally, many central banks have implemented restrictive monetary policies, which are expected to help bring inflation levels back to their desired targets over time. Overall, the global economy is showing signs of improvement, although there is still much work to be done to fully recover from the recent challenges. Real GDP growth for the Bahamas' major trading partner, the United States, expanded by 2.1% in 2022, down from 5.9% in 2021. As with the global economy, the outlook for the U.S. economy remains uncertain, with a key factor in the outlook being the nexus between monetary policy and the rate of inflation. Average consumer prices in the United States rose by 8% in 2022, and with a target rate of 2%. The Federal Reserve responded with an ongoing restrictive monetary policy stance. Over the past year, the policy rate of interest has been raised 10 times, the latest rise taking place earlier this month. Driven primarily by rising inflation and reaction shocks, recent hikes in U.S. interest rates continue to have a pernicious effect on the Bahamas in terms of higher borrowing costs. These spillovers exacerbate debt burdens via higher interest rates, which can make financing debt repayments more difficult. Nevertheless, the projected rate of real GDP growth in the U.S., as projected by the IMF, has declined to 1.6% in 2023. Perhaps paradoxically, the rate of unemployment has remained at a 50-year low levels in the 3.5% range in the United States, and the projected rate of consumer price inflation at 4.5% in 2023. This all remains above the Federal Reserve's target. Uncertainty about the future path of the U.S. economy still remains high. Madam Speaker, on the other side of the world, China has been rebounding strongly following the reopening of its economy, with real GDP growth equating to 3% in 2022, and is projected by the IMF at 5.2% in 2023. Compared to the previous year, consumer prices in China rose with a 0.1% increase in February 2023 and 0.7% increase in March 2023. On an annual basis, inflation is forecast to remain relatively low in the range of 2%. According to the National Bureau of Statistics of China, in a press release titled National Economy showed a steady recovery in the first 2 months. Policy decisions in China were focused on promoting lasting development with priority on ensuring stable growth, employment, and prices. According to the release, production and demand improved significantly. Employment and prices were generally stable, and market expectations saw accelerated improvement, all attributed to policy decisions. In the Euro area, which refers to the member countries of the European Union who have adopted the euro as their currency, real GDP growth was 3.5% in 2022, down from 5.4% in 2021. The annual inflation rate in the euro area was 6.9% in March 2023, down from 9.2% in December 2022. The euro area unemployment rate has remained relatively stable to date, tempering slightly to 6.5% at the end of March 2023. As with the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank has maintained a restrictive monetary policy stance targeted on further reductions in rate inflation. This inevitably weighs on the buoyancy of the euro economy, which is projected by the IMF to expand in real terms by 0.8% in 2023. Madam Speaker, amidst the current uncertain and challenging economic climate on the global stage, the IMF has projected a 2.8% growth for the world economy in 2023, with a modest increase to 3% in 2024. Although inflation is expected to decrease, the rate at which it will do so is still slower than initially predicted, with a decline from 7% in 2023 to 4.9% in 2024. This will continue to pose a challenge for policy authorities in the major economies. That is a general outlook of the global market, global economy, and touching the two major economies, the US and China. And it does have influences on what happens in this jurisdiction, hence the context. So if I return now and give a domestic economic overview, in respect of the domestic economy, the GDP estimates recently released by the Bahamas National Statistical Institute reveal a notable rebound in the country's economic activity. Real GDP growth in 2022 was recorded at 14.4%. And in nominal terms, it grew by 11.9%. This outcome indicates the ongoing and significant improvement from the economic ravages imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The boom in the Bahamas has continued as businesses recover and many continue to grow. Many industries in this country recorded modest gains in 2022 when compared to the previous years. I am convinced the government's fiscal policy, namely the reduction of VAT coupled with other reductions in customs duties and excise taxes, contributed significantly to the economic growth. Other elements which contributed to growth included the digitalization of government services, especially the granting of concessions and legislative reforms. These measures have also facilitated the ease of conducting business in the country. Further, total visitor arrivals increased considerably, with increased spending in the economy by tourists. The effect of this increased spending by tourists was a noticeable rise in various components of household expenditure in 2022. Household expenditure in 2022 grew by 7%. Madam Speaker, a more detailed examination of the nominal GDP, which analyzes the economic performance of individual islands, can provide more insight. While some islands saw growth, others experienced a contraction during the period. The latest GDP statistics for New Providence paint a promising picture. It is important to highlight that New Providence contributes 78% of the Bahamas' total GDP. In 2022, New Providence experienced a significant increase in GDP of 17%, largely due to a boost in tourism. The accommodation and food service sectors were the leading force behind this growth, with real estate activities coming in a close second. This impressive performance has successfully restored the island's economy to its pre-pandemic state. In 2022, the combined GDP of Cat Island, Rum Cay, and San Salvador experienced a remarkable growth of 39%. Compared to the previous year. Although these islands only make up a small fraction of the Bahamas' economy, accounting for 0.4% of the total, their growth is still noteworthy and supports the government's very aggressive and successful effort to have reopened Club Med and San Salvador. Yes. In 2022, Exuma also played a crucial role in boosting the overall GDP of the Bahamas, contributing 2.1% to the country's economic growth. Exuma experienced a significant growth of 33% in its GDP compared to the previous year, which was largely attributed to the increase in tourist arrivals. The tourism industry played a pivotal role in Exuma's economic progress, allowing the island to surpass its pre-pandemic levels and achieve significant growth. From 2015 to 2022, the island of Andros consistently accounted for 1% of the Bahamas' total GDP. However, in 2022, the island's GDP reached its highest level in an 8-year period. Andros experienced a significant economic growth of 6.2% in 2022. With real estate activities being the primary contributor. Bimini and the Berry Islands contributed 1.4% to the Bahamas' total GDP. Despite the downturn in 2020, with the GDP dropping to almost 1/3 of its usual level, these islands have consistently maintained a strong economic performance from 2015 to 2022. Notably, in 2022, they witnessed a remarkable growth of 59% in their industries. Yeah. Surpassing the growth year of the previous year. Yes, this suggests that Bimini and the Berry Islands are poised to continue their upward trajectory and continue to make contributions to the overall economic growth of the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, Despite these gains, the data also revealed that other islands fared less well. In 2022, Abaco's GDP saw a decline of 6%. Its contribution to the Bahamian economy was 2.8%. Despite this, Abaco still ranked as the third largest island contributor to the country's overall economy. While there was a slight improvement in Abaco's economy compared to 2019, it has yet to reach the level seen before Hurricane Dorian. The decline in economic activity is directly related to the slowdown in real estate and construction sectors. Declines in the real estate sector are directly as a result of a shift to higher intermediate consumption in 2022 from that of the previous 2 years. In terms of declines in construction, it should be noted that in 2020 and 2021, Abaco experienced significant recovery efforts in the form of debris removal, site preparation, and rebuilding of damaged structures. Such efforts boosted the value added to the island's GDP during those years. As those efforts wrap up, the industry saw a gradual decline as construction tempered to normal levels in 2022, resulting in this lower GDP. Madam Speaker, Grand Bahama. Grand Bahama contributes 12% of the overall GDP of the Bahamas. Yet its economy declined by 9% compared to the previous year. There was a silver lining as the tourism sector witnessed a slight increase in 2022, which was evident in the growth of the accommodation and food and services industries. Unfortunately, the statistics show a prolonged decline in the Grand Bahamian economy. The evidence confirms the view of my government that the Hawksbill Creek Agreement economic model, which is meant to attract foreign direct investment, does not work. Furthermore, in our view, the governance model of the Grand Bahama Port Authority must change.
Yes, East Grand Bahama, we see you.
The Hawksbill Creek Agreement does not work. The Port Authority must change in order to realize the promise, growth, and prosperity which we all desire. Additionally, the government of the Bahamas has serious concerns regarding the Port Authority and its related companies with the terms and conditions of the Hawksbill Creek Act and its subsequent amendments. Previous administrations have made efforts to tackle the situation, but the issue is clearly systemic and fundamental. We believe, Madam Speaker, the time has come for decisive action. In due course, we will make a separate detailed announcement, and it may be during the course of the debate. Madam Speaker, the consistent decline in GDP faced by the Maguana, Acklands, Crooked Island, and Inago Group continued in 2022, with an 11% reduction when compared in 2021. The overall decline in this group is owing to the continued headwinds facing various industries, mainly salt harvesting. Elutra's contribution to the Bahamas GDP has remained steady at 2.6% from 2015 to 2022. However, in 2022, there was a decline of 1.3% in Elutra's GDP, attributed primarily to decreases in several key industry groups, including agriculture and fishing, wholesale and retail trade, motor vehicle repairs, and transport and storage. Long Island's economy made a contribution of 0.54% to the overall economy. Although the island's GDP experienced a contraction of 10% compared to the previous year, there was still growth in segments fueled by tourism, including accommodation and food services, as well as household employment. Madam Speaker, I now report on the domestic, economic, and monetary performance of the Bahamian economy for the period ending March 2023. During the first 9 months of the current fiscal year, economic conditions remain stable with strong stopover arrivals during the period. Persistent interest from tourists brought the count of total arrivals for the fiscal year 2022-2023 to 6.6 million visitors. That is at the end of March. There were 1.2 million arrivals by air, 5.4 million arrivals by sea. As I indicated, that total relates to the end of March. So they're still counting, Exuma. They're still counting. In respect of the vacation rental industry, the statistics provided by Air DNA confirm the favorable improvement in tourism. At the end of March, the data revealed that the average occupancy rate for entire unit listings had risen to 69.8%, an increase from 61%, recorded in the corresponding period in 2022. Similarly, for comparable hotel listings, the average occupancy rate has increased to 65.1%, up from 55.2% in the previous year. These figures underscore the upward trend in the vacation rental market and provide compelling evidence of its profitability. An ongoing stream of new foreign investment projects is currently underway, featuring a diverse range of ventures in New Providence, Exuma, Abaco, Long Island, Eleuthera, and Cat Island. With the continual expansion of tourism and foreign direct investment, we can expect to witness an increase in entrepreneurial opportunities and job creation within these sectors. Madam Speaker, according to the Bahamas National Statistics Institute, consumer prices in January 2023 saw a slight dip of 0.1% compared to December in 2022. This decline was primarily influenced by a reduction of 1.3% in food and non-alcoholic beverages. In February 2023, consumer prices again decreased by 0.1% compared to the previous month, with a decline of 1.1% in food and non-alcoholic beverages, and a 3.4% in miscellaneous goods being the major contributor. In this context, I would highlight that the ongoing enhancements in operations and processes at the Consumer Affairs Unit, the regulating body for price control in the Bahamas, act as a key reason for the moderation of price inflation. We have a new consumer protection bill that was laid in Parliament to be debated shortly, and have already hired additional price inspectors, price control inspectors in New Providence and the Family Islands. And in addition, we have committed additional training and resources to the department to further address the cost of living. Madam Speaker, a review of other key economic indicators show that monetary conditions in the Bahamas remain favorable and support stability in our exchange rate. External reserves grew by $76.9 million over the quarter to the end of March 2023 and total $2.7 billion. This growth, Madam Speaker, and it's significant to note, this growth is primarily due to economic activity rather than foreign currency borrowings. This is notably lower than the previous year growth of $513 million, which included proceeds from government's external borrowings. During the 3 months to March 2023, bank liquidity reflected moderate growth. For the period, the reduction in Bahamian dollar credit eased, and commercial and other lending continued to rise. In the external sector, the current account deficit narrowed at the end of 2022. This was mainly attributed to the growth in the services account surplus, which is further supported by the continuing rise in revenue generated from the tourism industry. In line with the projected global and U.S. economic developments, real GDP growth in the Bahamas in 2023 is expected to maintain the momentum that emerged in the post-pandemic period. As elsewhere, real growth this year is projected to settle in at somewhere more moderate levels in the range of 4.3%. And we think that's great. This reflects the very strong rebound that has already been experienced, but still remains at a level that is healthy by historical standards. As I now turn to a review of the fiscal performance during the first 3 quarters of the 2022-2023 fiscal year. That is from July 2022 to the end of March 2023. I will first consider the position concerning revenue. Total revenue amounted to $2.1 billion for the first 9 months of the fiscal year 2022-2023. This represents an increase of $267.2 million or 14.5% when compared to the previous year. To date, our total revenue stands at 73.9% of the budget forecast after 9 months, only 9 months. To more properly assess the magnitude of this improvement, it can be compared to the performance in the fiscal year 2018 to 2019, the last normal year before the pandemic. In this earlier period, total revenue collected during the first 9 months of the fiscal year accounted for only 63.7% of the budget forecast. Speak for itself. Improved performance in respect of total revenue was supported by a period-over-period increase of $291.3 million in tax revenue, which totaled $1.8 million during the period. Now, the period I'm talking about is 9 months. To date, tax revenue accounts for 72.9% of the budget forecast. Again, for the sake of comparison, tax revenue collected during the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year 2018-2019 represented only 62.6% of the budget then forecasted. The following key points concerning the revenue are noteworthy. Taxes collected on property grew by $24.3 million and totaled $130.7 million, which represents 77.1% of the budget target. This is in line with collection trends, as majority of property taxes are paid in the second half of the fiscal year. VAT receipts improved by $112.4 million and amounted to $947.5 million, representing 67.1% of the budget target. This enhanced collection of value-added tax is due to a better economic climate compared to the previous year, as well as the efforts of the reconstituted Revenue Enhancement Unit. Stamp. Someone called me the chief tax collector. Huh? Stamp taxes on financial transactions and VAT on real estate transactions grew by $28.8 million and totaled $80.5 million, which has surpassed the budget forecast by 16.3% or $11.3 million. Gaming taxes grew by $11.8 million to a level of $49.2 million and represents a 93.4% of the budget forecast at the 9-month mark. Licenses to conduct special business activity, which comprise specific business licenses and communication levies, increased by $8.1 million and totaled $89.1 million. To date, this represents 68.2% of the budget forecast. Taxes on international trade and transactions increased by $151.4 million and totaled $498 million. This category's strong performance, which represents 80.8% of the budget forecast, can be primarily attributed to the following factors. The Patriot tax collections increased by $80 million and totaled $128.6 million, which has surpassed the budget forecast by 32.6% or $31.6 million. Excise duties firmed by $63.5 million and totaled $180.1 million, reflecting 66.8% of the budget forecast. Customs and other import duties improved by $7.8 million and totaled $188.8 million for 75.6% of the budget. Madam Speaker, I would like to take this time to, again, as I did when I opened, to thank the Bahamian people, the public, business community, for their cooperation in acknowledging their responsibility. If they were not doing so, we would not be doing so well. And revenue agencies for their efforts in working with the Bahamian public. Madam Speaker, I will now review the position concerning expenditure. Total expenditure increased by $145.3 million to a total of $2.3 billion during the first 9 months of the fiscal year. This accounts for 67.8% of the budget target. In the revenue expenditure component, spending increased by $111.6 million to a total $2.1 billion, which accounts for 69.4% of the budget forecast. Spending on compensation of employees increased by $55.7 million to a total $594 million, representing 71.7% of the budget targeted. In this regard, it is important to note the recent developments in labor policies that have brought about positive changes for public sector workers in the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, these include an increase in the public sector minimum wage from $210 to $260 per week, as well as industrial agreements that have been signed with various unions. For instance, the Ministry of Education, Technical and Vocational Training, in collaboration with its 3 unions, has implemented a retention bonus scheme and awarded salary increases and increments for teachers and administrators. Similarly, the Bahamas Nurses Union successfully negotiated with the government to secure a retention bonus and other benefits for nurses. This is designed to curb the drain to our neighbors to the north, who have been poaching our teachers and nurses. In addition, public officers, such as police officers, defense force officers, and other orderly officers, received a salary adjustment in December 2022, retroactive to July 1st, 2022. These developments, Madam Speaker, signify a significant step towards offering equitable compensation for those who serve the public in the Bahamas. Looking now to other categories of spending, public debt interest payments increased by $58 million to total $391.8 million and amounted to 70% of the budget forecast. Payments on foreign currency obligations total $197.2 million, or 50.3%, while payments on our domestic debt obligations total $194.6 million, or 49.7% of targeted numbers. As a result of the tightening in global monetary policy, the average cost of borrowing in foreign currency has risen over the past 9 months. Spending on the use of goods and services, that increased by $29 million to a total of $432 million. To date, this accounts for 64.1% of the budget forecast. Current transfers, not elsewhere classified, increased by $33.1 million and total $163.3 million, or 63.9% of the budget forecast. Beyond these increases in expenditure, a few categories of spending experienced reductions. Government subsidies narrowed by $20.9 million and total $330.4 million. This equals 76.4% of the budget forecast. Government's COVID-19 recurrent expenditure measures over the 9 months of this fiscal year total $6.2 million. This represents a 94.4% decrease compared to the $96.6 million distributed at the end of June 2022. In respect of capital expenditure, during the first 3 quarters, spending increased by $33.7 million, totaling $193.9 million, which accounts for 54% of the budget forecast. Expenditure on the acquisition of non-financial assets increased by $42.4 million and total $167.4 million, which represents 63.4% of the budget forecast. This increase was the result of the following items of expenditure. Investments in buildings other than dwellings increased by $31.2 million and total $83.4 million, which accounts for 68.1% of budget forecast. This mainly reflected high expenditure on upgrades and maintenance of government buildings, construction and repair of schools, and upkeep of the community. Expenditure on transport equipment increased by $3.4 million and total $5.7 million, which represents a 49.3% of budget forecast. This was primarily owing to higher outlays for military vessel maintenance and motor vehicles. Outlays for other structures increased by $7.3 million, totaling $53 million, which represents 59.2% of budget forecast. During the period, further investments were made towards New Providence roadwork. Land improvement expenditures increased by $1.2 million to total $4.9 million, which accounts for 81.4% of budget. This was mainly attributed to parks and ground improvements. Capital transfers declined by $8.5 million and total $26.6 million, representing 28% of the budget forecast. The decrease in transfers can be attributed to the gradual decrease in COVID-19 and Hurricane Dorian support provisions. Madam Speaker, central government's fiscal performance for the first 9 months of the fiscal year show a deficit of $216.2 million, which accounts for 1.6% of nominal GDP. This deficit equates to 37.6% of the budget targeted. Compared to the previous year, the deficit to date represents a decrease of $120.1 million from the deficit of $336.3 million in the same period of that same year, prior year. The deficit in the previous year accounted for 2.7% of nominal GDP. And so, Madam Speaker, the deficit is heading in the right direction, down. At the end of March, the primary balance reflected a surplus equating to $175.6 million, a striking improvement from the primary deficit of $2.4 million in the previous year. The primary surplus experienced in the first 9 months of fiscal year 2022-2023 greatly exceeded the targeted $25 million set in the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure, as well as the $4 million deficit projected in the 2022 fiscal strategy report. The sizable surplus signifies that primary government spending, that is public spending, excluding interest payments, is less than revenue collection. Just to understand that, repeat it, the sizable surplus signifies that primary government spending, which is public spending excluding interest payments, is less than revenue collection. Long time. A continued primary surplus is essential to the target of achieving a balanced budget by fiscal year 2024-2025 and reducing the burden of central debt over the medium term. As a result of net borrowing activities, central government net debt increased over the 9 months by $290.8 million to an overall total debt of $11.1 billion. At the end of March 2023, domestic currency debt accounted for $5.9 billion, or 53.4% of total central government debt. Foreign currency debt accounted for $5.2 billion, or 46.6% of total central government debt. As I mentioned earlier, over the period, the debt to GDP ratio has been trending downward. At the end of June 2022, the end of the previous fiscal year, the debt stock was equal to 87.3% of GDP. However, at the end of March 2023, the end of the third quarter of the current fiscal year, the debt stock equaled 83.5% of GDP, which represents a 4.4% decline from the end of June 2022. Now we will not mention where we bought it from, because you will say that's controversial. but in June 2021, it was over 100. Our debt, the GDP ratio was over 100, man. Unsustainable. Unsustainable. And we now have it to 83.5%. And it's continuing to go down. As I mentioned, public revenue receipts were strong over the previous 9-month period. This was due to legislative reform, effective policy decisions, strengthened economic conditions, and more efficient collection efforts. Analysis of the trends of the first 3 quarters of this fiscal year and the years prior suggests that the government is potentially set to exceed the $2.85 billion target set forth in the February 2023 mid-year supplementary budget. I am confident that the revenue outturn at the end of the fiscal year 2022-2023 will near $2.9 billion. Public spending, Madam Speaker, has remained on track and is well within the budgeted amount. For this reason, I am confident equally that expenditure at the end of the fiscal year 2022-2023 will almost reach the target of $3.1 billion set in the supplementary. We're trying to stay on target. This will be the first time in a long time. Long time. And we'll talk more about this during the course of the debate, The primary balance will therefore record a surplus of $68.4 million at the end of the fiscal year, a $54.8 million increase from the $13.6 million surplus that was projected in supplementary budget. Likewise, the overall deficit is expected to improve to $520.6 million, down from the $575.4 million outlined in the supplementary budget. So we are holding the reins. Madam Speaker, I'll now shift our focus to the subject of government financing. The Bahamas' borrowing costs had begun to experience a downward trend in the previous quarter, but the cost of borrowing rose at the end of March 2023. At the end of the third quarter, the total average cost of borrowing for current outstanding debt had risen to an interest rate of 5.5%. This is notably higher than the previous year's rate of 4.93% at the end of March 2022. This increase in borrowing costs is primarily attributable to the higher costs associated with external loan facilities. More specifically, the average interest rate for external financing has risen by 1.99 basis points, resulting in a rate of 5.5% as of March, as I mentioned, compared to the preceding year's 3.56%. Throughout the past year, the interest rate policies of major central banks have been restrictive, as I've mentioned, with a series of interest rate increases. These adjustments have been primarily motivated by the escalation of inflation, and the resulting upsurge in interest rates has had an impact on the Bahamas' external borrowing costs. However, the cost of borrowings in the domestic market has been declining over the past quarters. Looking at it in more detail, we can see that the average interest cost for domestic loans subsided by 27 basis points to 4.62% at the end of March 2023, from 4.89% in the previous year. And the average interest costs for domestic bonds subsided by 3 basis points to 4.63% at the end of March 2023 from 4.66% in the previous year. These statistics affirm the government's latest medium-term debt strategy, which aims to shift its borrowing away from costly external commercial debt. Such debt has seen a sharp increase over the past 5 years, including recent interest rate hikes. This strategic move will enable the government to once again rely predominantly on the domestic market to meet its financing requirements. Madam Speaker, when considering the maturity of debt, or the average time it takes to repay the principal amount in the government's debt portfolio, a longer maturity period leads to a reduction in refinancing risk. In essence, prioritizing longer maturities is key to managing debt effectively. And so another element of the government's medium-term debt strategy is the goal of prolonging the average maturity time of its debt. In the face of unprecedented turbulence in the global financial markets, the government was able to maintain its average time to maturity. At the end of March 2023, the average time to maturity has decreased slightly to 6.7 years, down from the previous 6.8 years in March 2022. This variance is due solely to the external loan component, as the average time to maturity on internal debt has remained steady at 7.1 years. This highlights the significance of maintaining a prudent approach to debt management and aligning this administration's practices with government's optimal debt strategy. It is imperative that we continue to exercise prudence in this area to ensure financial stability. Madam Speaker, in our view, the Bahamas has the potential to expand the domestic government securities market and reduce its dependence on external borrowing. The shift towards higher domestic financing could provide a more sustainable and stable source of funding for the country's needs. In order to assist with the development of the government securities market in the Bahamas, a team from the International Monetary Fund conducted a technical assistance mission in March 2023. During their visit, they evaluated the current state of the country's sovereign debt market and provided suggestions for improvement. These recommendations were focused on 3 main areas: the primary market, cash management, and investors' relations management. The IMF team suggested implementing a more structured approach to these areas in order to facilitate growth and success in the local currency government bond market. In line with this approach, there are a number of initiatives, goals being planned for the strategic expansion of the local capital market. The rollout of the Bahamas Government Securities Depository in January 2023 was the first and most fundamental milestone in this process. Building on this modern infrastructure, the central bank and the Bahamas International Securities Exchange finalized a direct connection between the trading system and the BGSD, the Bahamas government bonds, in May 2023. The direct and automated settlement of the government security strengthens the efficiency and the secondary market. Looking ahead, the BGSD will roll out competitive bidding for primary market Bahamas registered stock issuances early in the fiscal year, thereby allowing the market to price government bond issues. This initiative will enhance price transparency, allow for the development of a true domestic yield curve, while at the same time strengthening the local bond market. In terms of policy reform, a significant step forward will be to promote and encourage an increase in the level of government securities held by regulated and unregulated businesses. Therefore, in this budget, the government is removing any tax on the interest income that a business would otherwise incur by holding any type of government securities. In addition, there will be the formulation of a master repurchase agreement for government securities. This initiative will add agility to the local bond market and better bolster central bank monetary policy operations. In the long term, the government will seek to implement buybacks and switches to standardize and increase the depth of securities trading across the secondary market. Madam Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic and the poor policy response by the government of the day, along with the wasteful public borrowing which accompanied it, led to the historically high debt levels for the Bahamas. So, notwithstanding the fact that the micro-fiscal performance has now improved, the overhang of debt has been a significant factor in credit rating actions during this period. Therefore, in October 2022, Moody's Investor Services downgraded the Bahamas credit ratings from Ba3 to B1, largely due to the unsustainable rise in debt undertaken by the previous administration. However, the outlook was revised upwards to stable, reflecting Moody's confidence in our strategies. Yes. Confidence was also buoyed by the early harvest, which include the recovery of our tourism-driven economy and a reduction in the fiscal deficit. So in November 2022, S&P Global Ratings affirmed the Bahamas credit rating at B+ with a stable outlook, citing positive economic growth and overall confidence in this administration's strategy, which is reducing fiscal debt and showing the growth of government debt and slowing. Let me repeat that, and slowing the growth of government debt. Madam Speaker, the Inter-American Development Bank and the Caribbean Development Bank are the primary development partners for the government. Both institutions have provided considerable and invaluable support since the COVID-19 pandemic. Multilateral financial institutions offer a comparatively lower cost source of financing for the government when compared to commercial borrowing. Madam Speaker, the CDB, Caribbean Development Bank, has a portfolio of 7 loans valued at $111.4 million, and the IDB has a portfolio of 23 loans valued at $836.6 million. In addition, the government is presently seeking IDB board approval for 2 policy-based guarantee instruments, which will allow access to market financing at even more favorable rates. These guarantees will support the government's debt management operations during the upcoming 2023-2024 fiscal year, which also contemplates a debt for nature swap. A debt for nature swap is an arrangement whereby a developing nation, such as ours, can have a portion of foreign debt forgiven, typically in exchange for committing to specific conservation measures. Several key features of the guarantee are worth noting. It will contribute to the reduction in the cost of the guaranteed debt issued by the government, and also include a policy matrix determined by the Ministry of Finance in conjunction with the IDB. A key component of the government's fiscal strategy is to use access to the CDB and IDB financing to lower our overall funding cost by leveraging the institution's AAA credit rating. Reduce borrowing costs and improve debt tenor are tools which should improve the overall debt profile of the nation. Madam Speaker, this survey of the macroeconomic conditions affecting the Bahamian economy offers a clear context of the conditions under which the budget has been constructed. I turn now to part 2 of this communication. I will outline the key fiscal policy measures within this budget. This will include the revenue and expenditure measures reflecting the government's priorities in respect of national security, economic security, and in securing the lives and livelihoods of the Bahamian people. In addition to the measures outlined today, further details and a greater scope of other policy priorities will be addressed during our second reading. National security. National security remains the #1 priority for every country in the world. Governments have a primary duty to defend their borders and to keep their people safe. And so it is here in the Bahamas. The immigration plan, which we launched a few months ago to strengthen our security at the border, is now bearing fruit. The international partnerships we have secured and fortified have led to a reduction in illegal immigration. We will continue to strengthen our approach by providing 4 new vessels to the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and continue implementation of our immigration plan, Operation Secure Restore. In recognition of the service which our Defense Force personnel give, we are providing enhanced allowances for seagoing and technical personnel for the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. This budget also provides funding for a new Shantytown task force. This is a new line item of expenditure to support the demolition of illegal and unregulated communities. Looking firmly within our borders, Madam Speaker, when asked, many Bahamians cite crime or the fear of crime as one of their main concerns. A few months ago, I visited, along with the Minister of Education, the S.C. McPherson Junior High School. And I invited children to ask me questions. Many of the questions from these fine young people related to crime. Their anxiety is hardly surprising, given the reports and images of violence which unfortunately have become part of our daily lives. The fact that so much of violent crime is gang-related does not mean that we should care any less about such senseless waste of life. Madam Speaker, I want our Bahamian children to grow up without these fears. I want them to dream big. But if a child is worried about the safety of a brother, a friend, a cousin, or if a child is worried about his own safety, it is hard to ask him to expand his ambitions. Fear can be a powerful inhibitor, a formidable obstacle to achieving one's full potential. This limiting of dreams might not show up in official statistics, but I see it in the faces of children who should be enjoying carefree childhoods, but who instead have already known too much fear and apprehension. For our beautiful, extraordinary children, for all of our people, we are determined to make the Bahamas safer. We have launched, Madam Speaker, a number of initiatives to reduce crime. The results so far, although promising, are not coming as quickly as any of us would like. Poverty, despair, and violence have deep roots. We have expanded the urban renewal program. We have recruited hundreds of new police, defense force, correctional and immigration officers. We've also increased funding for police saturation patrols and recruitment of new officers. To assist these officers in their work, we've already acquired 150 vehicles, including 100 dual cab trucks and 50 motorcycles. As part of our commitment to rehabilitating offenders so that they may become better citizens once they are released, we have increased funding for the Second Chance program to reduce recidivism, or in other words, reduce the likelihood of a return to criminal activity. Madam Speaker, in this budget, I'm pleased to announce that we are implementing an even more comprehensive approach to fighting crime. This covers a full range of interventions, including prevention, detection, prosecution, punishment, and rehabilitation. Funding will be provided for the renovation of community centers in the inner city areas of New Providence. In order to better serve those involved in the administration of justice, the premises and facilities of the courts will be renovated and a new judicial complex built. We will continue to invest in technology such as CCTV and body cams for the Royal Bahamas Police Force, as well as acquire additional vehicles and hire more new staff. We have allocated funding to build a women's shelter, and we are increasing legal aid support for victims of domestic violence. Both within the social services framework and with a victim care fund within the Office of the Judiciary. My government is fully committed to fighting crime, fighting the causes of crime, and increasing support for victims of domestic violent crime. Before I move on, Madam Speaker, I wish to offer a brief thought about an aspect of national security, which I believe may, in time, grow into a cause for concern. Madam Speaker, I wish to make clear how much I deplore and condemn efforts by some in our country to weaponize issues around national security for their own political and financial benefit. Violent and often racist language, abusive invective, and dehumanization have no place in our society. As many of us were once, and some still, on the receiving end of this kind of talk, this is the kind of history we should have put firmly behind us. You know, we are all God's children. And it said we are made in His image. And it said we are worthy of His grace. Yes, we must and we will defend our borders. Yes, we must and we will uphold our laws. But we can and must reject poison, and we must reject hatred. I'll leave it there for now, Madam Speaker. When I spoke earlier of the turbulence and chaos of recent years, I referred to the experience of many Bahamians for whom the passage of Hurricane Dorian and the shutdown associated with the COVID-19 pandemic introduced degrees of economic uncertainty they had never known. Some people lost their homes, others slept in cars, Some struggle to find regular meals to feed their family, while others struggle to provide the most basic level of financial support for their loved ones. We do not forget those dark times, but it strengthens our resolve to build an economy which is ready not only to weather economic storms, but is also sufficiently resilient to move us closer to the ideals of economic justice and dignity. If we can build economic security, then Bahamians can have more confidence that the economy works for them and have even greater confidence in planning their own future once they believe that the economy is working for them. Investment is obviously a cornerstone of activity, and so we will continue to seek to attract increased foreign and domestic investment. We especially want to encourage greater participation by Bahamians in the economy by promoting Bahamian ownership through support for small and medium-sized enterprises. This government, Madam Speaker, has set a number of medium-term budgetary targets and has committed to diligent and prudent financial management. Moreover, we plan to utilize innovative financing methods through effective public-private partnerships. A key focus would be to generate more revenue for the public purse without raising taxes. This means no increase in VAT, no increase on customs duties, excise duty, tax rates, or real property tax rates. We will instead increase revenue collection by improving tax compliance and enforcement. This is based on a simple principle of fairness. You know, most people pay their taxes. Why should some people be allowed not to? If people are experiencing hardship, or if there are other extenuating circumstances, we invite people to come and talk with us. We usually come up with some form of agreement to allow them to live and continue in business. But there's a responsibility on all of us to see to it that our duty to country and state is fulfilled. It is noteworthy, Madam Speaker, that when pressed to do so, a significant number of people readily pay off their arrears. This suggests to me that they weren't unable to pay their taxes, they simply didn't do so. We understand that our approach differs from that of the previous administration, who disbanded the Revenue Collection Unit and allowed a select group of people not to pay their taxes. But we consider that approach offensive to sound fiscal management and basic principles of fairness. To implement this policy, Madam Speaker, we will introduce the following measures. We will establish a large taxpayer unit to improve compliance and revenue collection from the 100 or so businesses that account for $1.7 billion in taxes. We will implement a national revenue targeting center that uses technology to identify anomalies in revenue reporting amongst taxpayers, which will lead to more efficient audits. And we will improve revenue collection in the Family Islands by increasing staffing levels in revenue collection agencies in the Family Islands. In other measures, we'll introduce and implement an updated fee schedule for the registration of pleasure crafts to address chronic revenue underperformance in the marine sector. We want our state-owned enterprises to succeed, and we are determined to improve transparency, efficiency, and profitability in the way they operate. We have decreased the budget allocation for SOEs from the previous budget. We will also issue clear expenditure guidelines to SOEs to ensure transparency and financial responsibility in the conduct of their businesses, to ensure that it conforms with the national fiscal objectives. We will also implement a plan to increase revenue by collecting dividends from state-owned enterprises. So it is our goal to ensure that they become profitable. As part of the package of broader measures we are adopting, will it continue to reduce customs and excise duties rates to encourage investments? As much as has been achieved to revive abandoned relationships. I should repeat this one. As much as has been achieved to revive abandoned relationships and restore the reputation of the Bahamas on the world stage, we will reduce travel expenditure to a level at below fiscal year 29-20 levels. And we will further advance efforts to introduce a contributory pension scheme for the public sector employees to ensure that all can benefit upon retirement. Investment in infrastructure is a key method of promoting growth in the Bahamas. As well as providing much-needed services for the Bahamian people, critical and key infrastructure are necessary for economic development. And so the government will continue to leverage private sector financing through public-private partnerships and continue to undertake projects such as roads, airports, development in various family islands. Major new projects already identified include road projects in Cat Island, Long Island, Eleuthera, and Exuma. Major airport projects in Cat Island, Exuma, Long Island, Grand Bahama, Bimini, and several other islands are also being planned. And Speaker, the high cost of living in the Bahamas is well known and experienced by everyone. In order to temper the effects, we've already increased the minimum wage, granted promotions across the public service, and in partnership with the labor unions, sought to secure better employment for working people. In this budget, we have allocated $4.7 million to continue an employment program in Grand Bahama. We have also provided for salary increases outlined in multiple public sector agreements benefiting police officers, defense officers, prison officers, social workers, and others. We are proud that we have ended years of uncertainty and disquiet within the labor movement by completing 18 union agreements. And we have signed a 3-year agreement to run with most of these unions to run from July 2022 to June 2025 to increase allowances and salary scales through a $40 million industrial union agreement. We have also allocated funding to the Ministry of Finance for a thorough evaluation of salaries in the public sector to ensure equitable compensation for the public servants. Madam Speaker, food security is an issue. The government has implemented various programs to strengthen food security over the medium term. For example, we have introduced the Golden Yolk Egg Program, which facilitated the purchase of chickens for domestic egg harvesting on a large scale. Going forward, we will continue to increase food security and maintain capital expenditure in agriculture. We will implement a new agriculture administration cadet program. We have set aside funding for the expansion of BAMC and other farmer markets in New Providence, and to support the supply of equipment to assist farmers in land development. We will fund a number of initiatives to directly increase local agriculture and fishing. We'll use greenhouse investments for local produce, cultivation. The fishing pot program trains fishermen how to make and use pots as a means of fishing. We will promote the citrus tropical orchard development in Andros, Keral, Lutra, and Abacoy.
Yes, sir.
And we will promote the hydroponic program and raised bed initiatives in primary schools to teach children a more efficient means of growing produce. And funds have been allocated to ensure those things occur. Madam Speaker, since coming to office, I have championed the cause of the Bahamas and other small island developing states, particularly ocean states around the world, on the need for the carbon-producing countries to do more to help us. While things are slowly but promisingly moving forward, we need to move at a pace to improve our state of readiness. And so the government, in collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank, is executing an $80 million project aimed at mitigating the impact of climate change. Even though the Bahamas' carbon footprint is negligible compared to the industrialized countries, we are committed to doing what we can to reduce our carbon emissions. And so, as part of our focus on transitioning to renewable energy, we have allocated $22 million for the adoption of solar technologies on sites in Mequona, Inagua, Crooked Island, Acklins, and Long Key. We are already in negotiations to reduce the carbon footprint. We are already in negotiations to reduce the carbon footprint of BPL and make electricity more affordable. We are further negotiating a $20 million facility, a solar facility, to encourage the adoption of green technology among small and medium businesses. The work we have been doing over the past 1.5 years to develop a new carbon market continues apace. And we should realize the fruits of that in the first quarter of next year. Even small countries like ours have a role to play in helping to move the planet towards net zero. You know, National Youth Guard. Madam Speaker, I'm especially pleased to announce today that we have provided funding in this budget for the National Youth Guard program. By investing in this program and the young individuals who successfully complete it, we are not only supporting their personal growth and development, but we are also investing in the future and security of our nation. Through this program, we are able to establish a strong and capable group of young individuals who are equipped to provide aid and comfort and support to both public and private agencies in times of emergency and disaster. This investment in our youth serves as an investment in the well-being and protection of our country as a whole. So many factors contribute to our individual sense of personal security. The things we need to secure our lives and livelihoods, so many things. In this budget, we are introducing a broad range of measures, specifically relating to education and skills, health and wellness, and housing and home ownership. Education is key. It is the number one path to success. And yet, if a young person is malnourished or suffering from an otherwise preventable condition, their life chances are greatly restricted. Similarly, lack of decent housing not only compromises the education potential for students, but the potential for work and stability for those with jobs. And so, we are introducing a number of measures linked to promoting a greater sense of personal security. And so, Madam Speaker, in order that our children can put aside thoughts of hunger and concentrate on their schoolwork, today I am pleased to announce that my government will be introducing a new national school breakfast program. Madam Speaker, hunger does not only afflict students. Hunger does not only afflict students. And because of this, we'll also establish a special food assistance program to provide funding for organizations operating feeding programs for vulnerable people. Continuing our efforts, Madam Speaker, from our last budget to promote better health and greater wellness among the Bahamian people, in this budget, we are providing funding to continue the development of a new health facility in Grand Bahama. To build a new hospital in New Providence. As well as continuing to improve the infrastructure for Family Island clinics. To make healthcare more affordable, we will consolidate national health insurance and the prescription drug plan into an overall health policy. The provision of health insurance is costly, but the government realizes that this is a necessary benefit for many employees. And so the government is aggressively taking steps to protect this benefit for as many employees as possible. Once these plans become more crystallized, more information will be provided. In particular, given some of the speculative commentary recently, I wish to make clear that members of the uniformed branches of our services will continue to benefit from insurance coverage. And new members who are joining will still be eligible for subsidized dependent coverage. And finally, Madam Speaker, in relation to health care, in a first for the Bahamas, in relation to health care, Madam Speaker,
Members,
in a first for the Bahamas, we will be supporting the creation of the first ever national organs transplant program. I trust that this will become a life-saving benefit to many who depend on such generous donations for their survival. Home ownership. Madam Speaker, home ownership is the dream of many Bahamians, a dream that can be realized. However, many are currently struggling to achieve this dream because of elevated building costs, as well as the limited supply of housing stock, driving up home and property prices. While the government has no intention of policing the housing market beyond the necessary checks and balances, it is evident that some intervention is needed to assist those in need. For that reason, customs duty rates were lowered on select building materials to alleviate some of the construction costs of new homes. We are extending the first home exemption benefits for owner-occupied residents up to triplexes. Yes. And so if 2 or 3 persons want to build a duplex or triplex, it could be siblings or just friends, and they can live in one and once they can live in it, they'll have the exemptions that any first homeowner will get. And so we're introducing that now. To address the limited supply of houses, concessions for housing projects have been expanded to non-government entities for projects with a maximum value of $300,000 in construction costs per unit. Moreover, the government has made investments in a rent-to-own program. This budget includes funding to accelerate these efforts. This program holds significant importance for individuals and families looking to achieve home ownership but who face financial barriers. This rent-to-own program offers an alternative path towards acquiring a home by allowing tenants to rent a property with the option to buy it later, and with some of the rent going towards that purchase price. These potential homeowners will have the opportunity to demonstrate the ability to meet financial obligations through monthly rental payments before making a long-term commitment. This option not only fosters a sense of stability and pride for tenants, but also promotes home ownership, widely regarded as a cornerstone of wealth creation and community development. Madam Speaker, just yesterday, I had an exciting video call with the students at the Forest Primary School in Exuma. Yeah. Forest Primary School in Exuma. I was happy to be on that call with them. Their excitement, enthusiasm, and optimism was infectious. And I wanted to make special mention of them today. There was a different kind of excitement amongst the students. Of course, that excitement, these young primary school students, many of them wanted to be prime minister soon. And so we had to encourage them how to pass. And then I had a different kind of excitement amongst the students that graduated last week from the University of Bahamas. No doubt for many of them, the first move from academia and hopefully into the world of work. A striking feature of the graduating class was that Minister, about 80% of the graduates were female. We observed that last year as well. And it's been a continuing trend for many years, I'm advised. And given that the Bahamian population is fairly evenly split between males and females, it was noteworthy and disappointing that more of our young men are not taking advantage of the free university education which is on offer. We must make more active efforts to encourage them. I ask my colleagues here to join me in those efforts to encourage our young men to take up this free offer of education. My government has already increased the investment in education, and we will continue to do so. In terms of infrastructure, we have expanded the Bahamas BTVI to the Family Islands. In terms of education and skill development, we have increased teacher salaries by 15% and implemented a retention bonus scheme To address the shortage in teachers, we have recruited 200 additional teachers, teachers' aides, and guidance counselors. To help recover the learning loss which resulted from the lockdowns during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have initiated the Find Every Child initiative, that's what we call it, right? And a national learning loss testing initiative, which are showing positive results. And we have launched the National Smart Start program in partnership with the Ministry of Education and the BTVI. Looking ahead at this budget, we will increase funding for BAMSI, and we will increase funding for BTVI. We'll also increase funding to the Ministry of Education. As I said, Madam Speaker, I'm also pleased to announce that we have also allocated funding for a school for the creative and performing arts. Which takes us a step closer to fulfilling the dreams of many and fulfilling a key promise which we made during our election campaign. As a part of our commitment to investing in young people, sports, and the arts, we have also budgeted to host major international sporting events such as Grifter Swimming, Grifter Triathlon, and the World Relays. The hosting of these sporting events plays a crucial role in our Sports in Paradise initiative, as it not only celebrates athleticism, but also creates a platform for aspiring Bahamian athletes to shine. This, in turn, can lead to a plethora of opportunities and avenues for their future success. Madam Speaker, you may be aware of my long association with swimming, so it will come as no surprise that I'm very excited that we have made provision in this budget to construct a 50-meter pool in Grand Bahama. And to develop Family Island sports facilities. The facility in Cat Island is already near completion and serves as a benchmark for other facilities throughout the Bahamas. And our sailing has recently been proclaimed the national sports. We have set aside funding in this budget to develop it. Yes. At this point, champion, it's trophy up there. At this point, I wish to acknowledge that in the aftermath of the pandemic, we do appreciate that numerous civic and non-government organizations are facing persistent challenges in resuming their usual operations. I should repeat this one. Madam Speaker, I wish to acknowledge that in the aftermath of the pandemic, we appreciate that numerous civic and non-governmental organizations are facing persistent challenges in resuming their usual operations. And so, in this budget, we contain increased allocations for independent schools and children's homes. This, combined with the increase in social services benefits, which was a feature of last year's budget, demonstrates this administration's commitment to assisting the most vulnerable among us. I'll now elaborate further on the fiscal projections for the fiscal year 2023-2024. As I alluded to earlier in this communication, the government is committed to following the methodologies and projections in its 2022 fiscal strategy report as closely as reasonably possible. Since the preparation of the 2022 fiscal strategy report, international lending conditions firmed, leading to higher than usual interest rates. As a result, amendments were made to accommodate higher spending on interest rates payments in the upcoming fiscal year. Therefore, the deficit as a percent of GDP for the upcoming 2023-2024 is 0.2% higher than the 0.7% deficit target set forth in the 2022 fiscal strategy report. Please note that despite this, the national deficit as a percentage of GDP remains subdued, as I mentioned earlier. Barring the advent of unforeseen developments, we are still on track to achieve a balanced budget by 2024-2025. The following outlines the fiscal plan for the upcoming year. Recurrent revenue is projected to be $3.316 billion. Recurrent expenditure is expected to be $3.085 billion, and the recurrent surplus is projected to be at $230.7 million. For the current year, we are projecting a recurrent deficit of $164.3 million, reflecting a $395 million change. Interest expense is projected at $612.7 million, and the surplus on the primary balance is expected to be $481.6 million in comparison to $68.4 million from the current fiscal period. Capital expenditure is projected at $364.6 million, a modest increase of $5.6 million. Capital revenue is projected to remain unchanged at $2.8 million, and the overall deficit, which excludes debt repayment, is projected to be $131.6 million. This projected deficit for the fiscal year 2023-2024 is a $389.5 million decrease from the current year's projected outturn and represent 0.9% of GDP. This is aligned with the targets laid out in the 2022 fiscal strategy report and reaffirms the government's commitment to fiscal prudence. Madam Speaker, as I said at the beginning of this communication, our annual budgets are a cumulative effort. Even though we already see signs of progress, the full beneficial effects of the measures which we have already introduced will take several years to fully mature. We also understand that for those who are struggling with day-to-day challenges, they urgently need help and opportunity and support. And so we are also mindful to step in and step up to help to improve the lives of the Bahamian people. In setting the priorities of this budget, we seek to provide security in a number of meaningful and impactful ways. By continuing to strengthen our borders and fight against the scourge of crime, we will increase and improve our national security. By raising much-needed revenue without adding new taxes, we can expand the range and quality of services and investment on which Bahamians rely. By also prudently managing our public expenditure and adhering to our debt management strategy, the public finances will become ever more stable. In helping to ease the burden of the cost of living, enhancing food security, diversifying the economy to expand the number of jobs and increase the potential for wealth creation, we will provide greater economic security for the Bahamian people. And by making ourselves better prepared and more resilient to the impact of climate change, improving people's life chances by investing in health, education, housing, and job opportunities, we can better secure the lives and livelihoods of all. And as we go forward, we must ensure that the rising tide lifts everyone, that none are forgotten or left behind. As a Member of Parliament, representing a family island constituency, I was especially proud a few weeks ago when I attended the coronation in London and walked into Westminster Abbey behind a young woman from Mequona, young girl, 14 or 13, who carried a gold and black aquamarine flag. She hails from one of the least populated islands in our small country. And there she was, confident, marching forward, waving our banner high. It was a moment for me of great symbolism. This young lady from Iguana and me, this young boy from Old Bight Cat Island, stepping forward to represent our great country. Who would have thought it? Who would have thought it? This, Madam Speaker, is part of the great promise of independence that we should celebrate this year. I firmly believe that Bahamians can achieve greatly whenever we put our minds to it. What each of us needs is just an opportunity.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, with a greater sense of security afforded by this budget, I pray that the Bahamians everywhere will continue to lift themselves up and greet a brighter tomorrow. I am forever grateful to the people of Cat Island, Rum Cay, and Salvador, who have trusted and privileged me to represent them in this honorable house. May God continue to bless them as he continues to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
Order that the document be brought up. I'll do that.
Sorry, Madam Speaker. Let me just put it together. Yeah, I just. So she did.
Order the document to lie on the table.
Go.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for West
Madam
Grand
Speaker,
Bahama and Domain.
consistent with the budget communication, we now wish to lay several documents on the table.
Thank you, honorable member. As we go back to the order of business, we revert back to laying of documents by ministers.
It's laying of documents.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpkins, and Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table the International Persons Landholding Order 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents?
Draft estimates, but it was not on the sheet.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table Parliamentarians' Constitutional Office Allowance Amendment Order 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up.
Madam Speaker,
Order that the document do lie on the table.
I
Order laying.
beg leave to lay on the table a copy of the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure 2023-2024.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table.
So she's on her way. So that doesn't the case collapse entirely?
Yeah.
Further laying of documents?
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table a copy of the business license regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying?
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table a copy of the Customs Management Amendment Regulations 2023.
Order. Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying?
Madam Speaker, beg leave to lay on the table a copy of the Insurance General Amendment Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up.
Yep, documents to lay off.
Yeah, that's it for
To lay
Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Lutheran.
I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Fisheries Resources Jurisdiction and Conservation Amendment Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents?
I'd also like to beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Fisheries Resources Jurisdiction and Conservation Flats Fishing Amendment Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents, by minute. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table a copy of the following: the Immigration Fees Amendment Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document to lie on the table. Further laying of documents?
I beg leave, Madam Speaker, to lay on the table. Okay, sorry.
Further laying? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Isles.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Beg leave to lay on the table the Forestry Amendment Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document to lie on the table. Further laying of documents?
Yes, Madam Speaker. The Animal Protection and the Control Dog License and Identification Tag Fees Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order the document be brought up. Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying?
Yes, the Animal Health and Production Fee Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents?
Yes, the Plant Protection Fees Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying?
Yes, and finally, Madam Speaker, the Wildlife Conservation and the Trade Permit Fees Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table the Water Skiing and Motorboat Control Order 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document to lie on the table. Further laying of documents?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table the Road Traffic Identification Plates Fees Amendment Order 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order the document be brought up. Order that this document do lie on the table. Further laying?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table the Boat Registration Amendment Rules 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents?
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table the Boat Registration Yacht Amendment Rules 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Order the document do lie on the table. Further laying?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table the Commercial Recreational Watercraft Amendment Regulations 2023.
Thank you, honorable member. Order the document be brought up. Order the document to lie on the table. Further laying of documents? Thank you, honorable member. We revert back to the order of business. Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentations of petitions. Presentations of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpkins, and Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and read for the first time a bill for an act to provide for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st of July 2023 and ending the 30th of June 2024.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Order that the document be brought up.
Huh? What'd you say?
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Appropriation Revenue Act, Expenses 2023, 2024, Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. Ordered that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards the trade expenses of the government of the revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st of July 2023 and ending 30th.
Thank you. For the first reading, you may continue, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act for the appropriation of the sum of $364,646,000 for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of Bahamas for capital development for the financial year ending the 30th of June 2024.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Appropriation Capital Development 2023-24, Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act for the appropriation of the sum of $364,600,000 for towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for capital development for financial year ending 30th of June 2024.
Thank you. For the first readings, you may continue, honorable member.
Beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of a bill for an act to amend the Family Islands Development Encouragement Act to extend the application of this act to all family islands and to validate exemptions granted in respect to family islands are specified in the schedule to this act.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Family Islands Development Encouragement Amendments and Validation Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
Bill for an act to amend the Family Island Development Encouragement Act to extend the application of this act to all family islands and to validate exemptions granted in respect to family islands as specified in the schedule.
Thank you. For the first readings, you may continue, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time an act to require businesses to hold a business license, to repeal the Business License Act 2010, and for connected matters.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder? Thank you, honorable members. Order the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Business License Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to require businesses to hold a business license to repeal the Business License Act 2010 and for connected matters.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you. For the first reading, you may continue, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Real Property Tax Act.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Real Property Tax Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Real Property Tax Act.
Thank you. For the first readings?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Public Finance Management Act 2023.
Thank you, honorable. Thank you, honorable member. Order the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Public Finance Management Act 2023.
Thank you. For the first readings? You may continue, honorable member.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to establish a fund for the deposit of revenue derived from immigration fees, levies, and for connected purposes.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Public Finance Management Immigration Levy Special Fund Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to establish a fund for the deposit of revenue derived from immigration fees, levies, and for connected purposes.
Thank you. For the first readings, you may continue, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Stamp Act 2023.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Stamp Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Stamp Act.
Thank you. For the first readings, you may continue, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Customs Management Act.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Customs Management Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Customs Management Act.
Thank you. For the first readings, you may continue, honorable member.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Value Added Tax Act.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Value Added Tax Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Value Added Tax Act.
Thank you for the first readings. You may continue, honorable member.
I rise. I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to provide for the imposition and collection of excise duties and, a bill for an act to make new provisions for the imposition and collection of customs duty to give effect to the International Convention on Harmonization, Commodity Description and Coding System, and to repeal the Tariff Act 2018 and for connected purposes.
Thank you. Is there? Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up.
The big one down there is the tariff. That's the excise, the tariff.
That's the Tariff Act.
Yes, sir.
I understand.
That's the one you just read.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Tariff Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to make new provisions for the imposition and collection of customs duties to give effect to the International Convention on the Harmonized Commodity Description and Coding System, and to repeal the Tariff Act 2018 and for connected purposes.
Thank you. For the first readings, you may continue, honorable member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to provide for the imposition and collection of excise duties and excise taxes, and to repeal the Excise Act 2018 and for connected purposes.
Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Excise Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to provide for the imposition and collection of excise duties and excise taxes, and to repeal the Excise Act 2018 and for connected purposes.
Thank you. For the first readings, you may continue, honorable member.
Introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Tax Appeal Commission Act.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Tax Appeal Commission Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Tax Appeal Commission Act.
Thank you. For the first readings.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Insurance Act and to validate the collection of premium taxes.
Thank you, honorable. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Insurance Amendment and Validation Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Insurance Act and to validate the collection of premium taxes.
For the first reading,
Thank you.
you may continue, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, I first beg, before requesting the introduction and name of this bill, I beg leave to withdraw Bill number 58 that's on the agenda, which will be substituted with this new bill that I now lay. With your
Thank you,
leave.
Honorable Member. Yes, Honorable Member.
So I now beg leave to introduce and lay in substitution of Bill 58, a bill for an act to provide for substantial economic presence and annual reporting of a commercial entity carrying on relevant activities and for connected purposes, to repeal the Commercial Entity Substance Requirements Act 2018 and for connected matters.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Before I move forward with that, I'm asking for the consent of the House. No objections? Thank you, Honorable Member. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to provide for substantial economic presence and annual reporting of a commercial entity carrying on relevant activities and for connected purposes, to repeal the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act 2018 and for connected matters.
Thank you. Further first readings? You may continue, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Consistency Capital Grant Act.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the bill be read. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Constituency Capital Grant Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Constituency Capital Grant Act.
Thank you. For the first readings, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Exumas and Ragged Island.
Speaker, I beg leave to withdraw Bill number 66 on the agenda and to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following. A bill for an act to establish the Tourism Development Corporation of the Bahamas, to establish a tourism development fund, to encourage the resilient and sustainable development of the tourism industry, and for matters connected therewith.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Again, I beg the leave of the House. Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member for St. Anne's, any disagreements? No disagreements. Thank you, Honorable Member. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Honorable Members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Tourism Development Corporation of the Bahamas Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to establish the Tourism Development Corporation of the Bahamas, to establish a tourism development fund, to encourage the resilient and sustainable development of tourism industry and for matters connected therewith.
Thank you. Further first readings? You may continue, Honorable Member.
Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following. A bill for an act to amend the Hotels Act.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Hotels Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Hotels Act.
Thank you for the first readings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Engliston.
Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the University of the Bahamas Act.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. University of the Bahamas Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the University of the Bahamas Act.
Thank you for the first readings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Luther.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the Fisheries Act.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Fisheries Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Fisheries Act.
Thank you. Further first readings? You may continue, honorable member.
I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to provide for the sale of plants and animals by the Department of Agriculture, the provisions of agriculture services to the general public.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Agricultural Sales and Services Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to provide for the sale of plants and animals by the Department of Agriculture, the provisions of agricultural services to the general public.
Thank you. For the first reading, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the Immigration Act.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder? Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Immigration Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Immigration Act.
Thank you. For the first reading, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act 2018.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act 2018.
Thank you. For the first readings?
Just before we continue, we just wish to ask for extended time here and that we continue beyond the 1 o'clock hour.
Thank you. Is there, thank you, Honorable Member. It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House proceed beyond the 1 p.m. hour. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House will now proceed beyond the 1 p.m. hour. For the first reading, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Isles.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the Animal Protection and Control Act.
Second.
Thank you, Honorable Members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Animal Protection and Control Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Animal Protection and Control Act.
For the first readings, you may continue, Honorable Member.
Thank you. Also, Madam Speaker, a bill for an act to amend the Bahamas National Trust Act.
Second.
Thank you, Honorable Members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Bahamas National Trust Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Bahamas National Trust Act.
Thank you. For the first readings, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the Road Traffic Act.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. Order the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Road Traffic Act.
Thank you. For the first readings? You may
Madam
continue.
Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the Ports Authority Act.
Second.
Thank you, Honorable Members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for first time. Ports Authorities Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled. Thank you. For the first reading, you may continue, Honorable Member.
First time, a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the Passenger Tax Act.
Thank you, Honorable Members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. Passenger Tax Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Passenger Tax Act.
Thank you. For the first readings, you may continue, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: a bill for an act to amend the Harbor Dues Act.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Members. Order that the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. Harbor Dues Amendment Bill 2023. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Harbor Dues Act.
Thank you. For the first reading?
No further first readings.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Second reading, committal of bills?
None, Madam.
Committee of the Whole House. Third reading and passing of bills?
No, Madam Speaker.
Consideration of Senate amendments? Resolutions?
No, not yet. Notice.
Member statements?
Member statements.
Appointment of select committees? Instructions to select committees? Discharge of select committees? Notices for future meetings?
Notice, PM notice.
Huh? Notices?
Yes, sir. Having fun, eh? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpkins, and Salvador.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to give notice of the following. A resolution to approve the proceeds of borrowings. And I'll read the first two paragraphs and the operative part. Whereas Article 129(1) of the Constitution requires the Minister of Finance, for the end of each financial year, the cost to be prepared on annual estimates of revenue and expenditure of public services during the succeeding financial year, which shall be laid before the House of Assembly, and which estimates have been laid before the House of Assembly, which I've done. Be it resolved that this House authorize the Minister of Finance for the sum of $45,219,194 in such currency as the Minister may determine. Authorizes the Minister to borrow by way of government loans agreements or line of credit agreements, issuing securities, and creating any other debt instrument in local or foreign currency, subject to provisions, and total sum on the paragraphs A and C does not exceed the sum of $45,219,194, except for such amounts as may be necessary to refinance or reschedule existing public debt, and the House receives communication from the Minister of Finance at the earliest opportunity after the apportionment among paragraphs A, B, and C. Approves the proceeds of the said borrowing being used for the purposes of deferring expenditure in the 2023-2024 estimates of revenue and expenditure in excess of revenue.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the notice be brought up. Order the notice to lie on the table. Further notices? You may continue, Honorable Member.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I give notice of the following resolution. Whereas subsection 1 and 5 of the Parliamentary Constituency Office Allowance provides that the Prime Minister may by order, subject to affirmative resolution of the House Assembly, amend the schedules to the Act. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this House approves the Parliamentary Constituency Allowance Amendment Order 2023.
Thank you. Order that the notice be brought up. Order the notice to lie on the table. Further notice?
You know, notices is the name of the government.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, we wish to renew all notices in the name of the opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Adjournment?
Madam Speaker, I discussed earlier with the leader of the opposition and the member for Sinans, the possibility of us adjourning or suspending for 1/2 hour to return to deal with a matter of importance to us. but of course, we've decided otherwise. And the members we're going to break now. We'll return next week, Wednesday, to continue our tributes to the Honorable George A. Smith. We should do so in the first hour of our meeting next week, Wednesday. We'll have 1 hour where we'll contribute to the life lived by the honorable member who served in this place. Then we'll proceed to the debate on the budget 23-24. Madam Speaker, I now move that the House stands adjourned to Wednesday, the 7th day of June, 2023.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable member. It has been moved and seconded that the House stands adjourned to June 7th, Wednesday, June 7th, 2023 at 10 a.m. As many are in favor, will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. Final adjournment?
Madam Speaker, just one other note, Madam Speaker. We have agreed with the side opposite that our sessions will continue to 9 p.m. on each night of the debate. Madam Speaker, I now move that the House stands adjourned to Wednesday, June 7th, 2023 at 10 a.m.
Second.
Thank you, honorable members. It is moved and seconded that the business of this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, 7th of June, 2023 at 10 a.m.
All right!
The opening of Parliament. Live from the Bahama Convention Center.